So today, we're going to dig into a classic business case study, the story of Cabana Feet. It's this fascinating look at what happens when a company gets exactly what it wants, runaway success, and is pushed to the absolute breaking point. It forces this brutal choice between who you are as a brand and what you need to do to survive. It's really the paradox of success. I mean, just imagine it. Your product goes completely viral. A-list celebrities are wearing it. Demand is just exploding through the roof. It's the ultimate dream, right? Well, for Cabana Feet, that dream very quickly turned into an operational nightmare. It actually threatened the very foundation of their company. So in this explainer, we're going to break down how you, as a strategist, would think through a crisis that's actually born from massive success. So how are we going to tackle this? We're going to approach it just like a top-tier consultant. First, we'll diagnose the problem, really get under the hood. Then, we'll pinpoint the core constraints holding them back. After that, we'll structure all the possible options, run the numbers to see what actually works, and finally, deliver a clear, actionable recommendation. Okay, first things first. Let's get to know the company at the very center of this perfect storm. Who is Cabana Feet, and how on earth did they get into this incredible, yet really dangerous situation? So, you've got Cabana Feet. For a decade, they've built their entire brand on two key pillars: a really unique product, these gel flow flip-flops, and a powerful identity, all rooted in being 100% American-made. And then, lightning struck. Brad Pitt wears a pair in a huge movie, and literally overnight, they go from being a niche brand to a full-blown cultural phenomenon.
Now this viral moment, you'd think it's time to pop the champagne, right? Well, the party didn't last long. The dream of surging demand very quickly slammed into the harsh reality of their manufacturing capacity.
And this is where the problem just slaps you in the face. You can see their demand was steady, and then, boom, the movie hits, and demand, those bars, just shoots past their fixed capacity, that straight line. For a couple of months, they could burn through their inventory, but by September, that safety net was gone. They were staring down a massive and growing backlog of orders.
And I mean, just look at the scale of this thing. This wasn't a gentle wave of new customers. This was a tsunami. We're talking a more than four-fold increase in just 6 months. No system on Earth is built to handle that kind of shock without a rock-solid plan.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the problem. You see, they're caught in a trap of their own making. Their Made in the USA brand promise, the very thing that made them successful and cool, has now become a pair of golden handcuffs, preventing them from scaling up. They can't just call a factory overseas. It would completely violate their brand identity.
So what do you do in a crisis like this? Well, the first thing a consultant does is bring structure to the chaos. You have to lay out all the possible solutions using a principle called MEIS. It's a fancy acronym, but it just means that your options are mutually exclusive, no overlaps, and collectively exhaustive. You've covered all the bases. It ensures you don't miss anything. Using that thinking, we can break down the solutions into 6 distinct levers they could pull. The first 4 are all about increasing supply. You can run more shifts, make your current process way more efficient, invest in new tech, or, just build a whole new line. Option 5 is about taming demand by raising prices. Classic Econ 101. And then there's option 6, the strategic wildcard, temporarily outsourcing. And this, quote from one of the execs, just nails the whole dilemma with outsourcing. Look, it's the fastest way to get product out the door and capture those thousands of new customers who probably care more about the celebrity trend than where the flip-flops are made. But doing it risks completely alienating their original, loyal customers and just torching a decade of brand building. It's a massive gamble. Okay. So we have our options structured. We have our framework. Now it's time to move from just ideas to real analysis. Any good recommendation has to be grounded in the data. So let's run the numbers on some of the key operational levers to see what's actually feasible and, profitable. So first things first, we need a baseline. Before we can even think about adding shifts, we've got to have a solid understanding of what one standard 8-hour shift costs the business. And we have all the inputs we need right here: labor, supervision, benefits, and those little miscellaneous costs.
So, when you factor in the wages for the 10 workers and their supervisor, then add that 30% load for benefits, and finally, you tack on the miscellaneous costs, well, you get a really clean final number.
And there you have it, a nice round $2,000. That's our magic number. Every single 8-hour shift costs Cabana Feet exactly $2,000. This is the fundamental building block for the rest of our analysis.
Okay, now let's put that cost figure to work. The most important question for any operational unit is, When do we actually start making money? We need to know exactly how many pairs have to roll off that assembly line in a single shift just to cover that $2,000 cost.
The math here is pretty simple, actually. At an $8 profit per pair, they need to produce 250 pairs just to break even on that shift. And since we know they currently produce 300 pairs per shift, hey, that's good news. Every single shift is already profitable. So, the most obvious short-term fix is to add a third overnight shift. This would immediately boost their monthly capacity by 50%, taking them from 12,000 up to 18,000 pairs. It seems like a quick win, right? But like any big business decision, there are some serious trade-offs to consider. And this is where it gets complicated. On the one hand, yeah, you get more profit and you keep your competitors from stealing your thunder. But on the other, you risk burning out your workers, seeing your quality drop, and having your machines break down. And here's the real kicker, even with all that, you are still 7,000 pairs short of demand. It's a good first step, but it is not the final solution. So, what about a bigger, more permanent fix? The long-term play? Well, that's building a second production line. This would add another 16,000 pairs of capacity a month, bringing their total up to 28,000. This is the move that finally pushes them above that projected demand, but it requires a huge chunk of cash and a big bet that this new demand is here to stay.
Okay, we've defined the problem, we've explored the options, and we have run the numbers. Now it's time to bring it all together. To synthesize everything into a clear, decisive recommendation, how should Cabana Feet actually navigate this crisis?
Look, the right answer here isn't an either-or decision. The best path forward is a two-pronged solution. You have to move on two fronts at the same time. In the short term, they need to add that third shift immediately. It won't solve the whole problem, no, but it will capture an extra 6,000 sales a month. And while they're doing that, they have to execute their long-term strategy, investing in a new production line. This is the only option that lets them meet all the demand, protect their precious brand, and set themselves up for real, sustained growth. The Cabana Feet story is such a powerful reminder that sometimes your greatest strength can become your biggest constraint. Their success literally almost broke them. And that leaves us with one final thought. What's the one thing that makes your business great, that if you suddenly became wildly successful, could turn into your biggest bottleneck?